Approaching Killin from the south, an aerial view shows why a settlement should have developed here. In the days when all movement was on foot or by water, a situation lying where hill passes come in from north, south and west, and there are two rivers and a loch to the east, would tend to become a meeting place. Later, in times of civil and clan warfare, it would be easy to defend. Today, only one soldier stands guard at the entrance to Killin. The figure on the war memorial facing Ben Lane, with the Dochart behind him. The Tarmachan Range and Ben Glass and Ben Lawers are in the background. The congregation who gathered here in 1920 for the dedication of the memorial looked across the river to an area of common grazing with only 2 houses. Today the view is very different. As the crowd dispersed, most of them would walk down Grey Street, which at that time consisted of thatched houses, mainly occupied by crofters, who had grazing for their cattle on the land behind. As crofting died out in the village, the houses deteriorated, and eventually a new scheme of council houses replaced them after the Second World War. The old houses nearer the bridge were modernised rather than replaced over the years. At the east end of Grey Street stands the old inn of Clachaig, where tolls were collected for crossing the bridge at one time. Continuing along the south side of the river, an ancient stone circle can be seen just before reaching the house of Cannell, which was the seat of the Clan MacNab, the original lairds of this area. There is a vine here which at one time was second only in size to that at Hampton Court in the whole of Britain. Today it is smaller, but still alive. It is said that one of the MacNab chiefs tried to persuade an heiress to marry him by telling her that he had the most beautiful burying place in Scotland, but apparently the lady was not sufficiently impressed to accept this offer of marriage. His boast, however, had some substance. The burial ground, Inchbuie, is on the east side of the Dochart Bridge, on an island formed by the splitting of the river. Crossing the bridge and looking to the west, the visitor sees one of the best-known views in Scotland, familiar from many paintings and photographs, and lots of children have happy memories of hours spent playing on these rocks. In the winter, the view of the river is dramatically different. And after a spate, one can appreciate how the Dochart got its name, which means the scourer of evil. The old St Fillan's mill was originally a meal mill, but later both it and the Clansman mill further down the river became woolen mills, where tweed and tartan were woven until as recently as the Second World War. The St Fillan's mill was converted into a heritage centre in 1994. The healing stones of St Fillan are kept here as they have been for generations, and the old custom of rebedding them in wrack, gathered from the river on Christmas Eve, is still observed. The other symbols associated with St Fillan, his crozier and bell, are kept in the Royal Museum in Edinburgh. These pictures were taken in 1994, when they were brought to Killin Church for its 250th anniversary celebration. The mill wheel was restored in 1994, using the expertise of a one-time mill wheelwright, John Ridley, and it's possible to see where the lathe ran above the bridge, but very little of it remains where it ran eastwards to work the other mill. Beyond the Heritage Centre is the old smithy, once a hive of industry, and a popular place for village worthies to meet and no doubt put the world to rights. The view of Moneymore in the early part of the century was altered radically when the old thatched cottages were replaced by modern council housing behind them after the First World War. Where the old houses stood is now a parking place for buses. Opposite, McGregor's garage has now been replaced by a craft shop and tea room. The petrol filling station still exists as a reminder of the site's previous use, but even this may soon be only a memory. Manse Road, which older inhabitants of the village remember as Gun Brae or Cannon Road, so called because an old cannon stood on the hill where today's modern houses are now. The oldest house in the road is Peril Cottage, deriving its name from the fishers who made their living harvesting pearls from the River Dochart. The stone quern was used to grind corn and has been built into the wall. At the beginning of the century, the house was occupied by a joiner named McDermott, who had 8 daughters and 1 son. Looking at the house, it's difficult to imagine how they all got into it. Craignavy Cottage was originally called Taivyanach, which may mean the House of Blessing, or the Monk's House. Craignavy itself means the Holy Rock, where St. Fillan supposedly did most of his preaching. Also in Manse Road is the building from which the road takes its name, the old Free Church Manse, now Mansfield, and then the Masonic Lodge, which was granted to the local Freemasons over 100 years ago for a peppercorn rent by the then Earl of Breadalbane. This is still in regular use. In Myrtle Grove, Campbell's building, there are still 2 shops, now a bakery and a draper's, but many years ago McNee's Butchers were here, and the ironmongers run by Miss Tyson, who also owned the building. Opposite this is Glengarry, once a drover's inn and later Hamilton's grocer shop. The bow which gave access to the yard was open until comparatively recently and can still be seen. The next building, Fisher's Hotel, was previously Craigard and at one time occupied by John McDermott, who was a tailor. On the other side is Green Bank, where the gate used to sport this encouraging brass plate. Mr. Gentle's great love was music, and he originally came to Killin as the parish church organist. During his time here, he ran various musical events, particularly with children. He also sold paraffin as a sideline. He's seen here walking past a row of old croft cottages. The end one, Pink Cottage, was at one time a tea room. And the centre one was the local dairy run by the Mclarton family. They supplied milk and churns, which today's environmental health laws wouldn't allow, but everyone seemed to thrive. The large villas in the main street are a reminder of the days when it was common for families from cities to take a house for the summer, and several of these houses have cottages at the back, where the owners lived while the big house was let. The first post office in Killin was in this building, where Mcrae the Butchers is now. It later moved to Lyndoch, a large house built by the Harwood family. Henry Harwood is a watch and clock maker with an inventive turn of mind. He pioneered the steel salmon trace and made superb brass fishing reels for use in Loch Tay. He also dealt in freshwater pearls, and in the building opposite Lyndoch, now Fernbank, he had a cycle repair shop. Next door was once an annex of the Killin Hotel. There was consternation here in 1939 when the Italian manager was interned, but fortunately not for long. Later a privately owned hotel, but now a much-needed retirement home. The east wing of this building housed a well-known grocer's business between the wars, McCarrachers. And as can be seen from this recently excavated bottle, they even had their own label products in those days too. Opposite McCarrachers until the 1950s stood the United Free Church, a handsome building, which sadly had to be demolished when its condition deteriorated. It was the obvious site for the expansion of the school, which became necessary with the influx of so many extra pupils when the Hydra scheme started. The old school is now mainly used as the library. Breadalbane Park, which was donated to the community by the then Earl, and the entrance has recently been modified to great effect. Craiglee, or Cameron's Building to give it its old name, is where we see Shutter's Restaurant today. It has been home to many businesses, one of which was John McAnally's butcher shop. He was a well-known businessman who unfortunately outraged some of the ladies of Loch Tayside by printing his egg bags like this. At the other end of this building there used to be a stationer's run by Susan Cameron and later her niece Violet. This historic photograph shows them both, and notice that the billboard indicate it was taken on the very day First World War broke out. After the Second World War, it was a dairy run by Hall Farquharson, and now Maureen Gould's antique shop. Fassy Fern is the next building, with its ground floor completely occupied by a grocer's shop. For many years, D&J McEwen, and now Cost Cutter. Dreadnought Place is another tenement with shops below and flats above. There has been a stationer's business here with an angling section for many years. One of the characters of the village, Danny Campbell, Willie Allen and then his son Douglas, and Peter Ross, the inventor of the well-known angling fly which bears his name, have all occupied the site in turn. Between the wars, the neighbouring shop was run by Bob Mingus and later by Betsy Mclarton as a grocer's. Arthur Forster took it over to supply electrical goods, and it's his granddaughter who now runs it as an outdoor pursuit centre. Opposite Shutters is another row of very old cottages, the first one of which was occupied by Sandy Cameron, the saddler at the beginning of the century. The crofting land behind has now been developed and includes the new medical centre. Until that was built, Loch Tay Cottage had been the doctor's home and surgery since the 1880s. Across the road is the Episcopal Church, which was given the nickname the Grouse Kirk because it was used only during the months when the wealthy shooting tenants came here from the south. The Earl of Breadalbane had substantial shares in a corrugated iron company at the time, and hence its name, a tin church. The Mclarton Hall was built in 1935 with money left to the community by a farmer who retired to Killin from Dal and Loch Tayside. St Fillan's Church, the old parish church of Killin, was built in 1744. It contains an ancient seven-sided stone font, which was discovered half buried in the old churchyard and is thought to date from the 9th century. Outside the church is a memorial to the Reverend James Stewart, who translated the New Testament into Scottish Gaelic and was one of the most notable ministers of the parish. His place in village history is commemorated in the name Stewart Road. There has been an inn on the site of the present Killin Hotel for at least 3 centuries. The building preceding this one was burnt to the ground in the 1940s and was known to the older members of the community as the Street House or Tyna Sarach. For many years it was a well-known fishing hotel which employed local people during the salmon fishing season. One of the oldest buildings in Killin, the Avrach, is thought to have been a prison which at one time housed Jacobite captives and was demolished when the park was upgraded, and the new sports complex now occupies this area. Another old inn is situated beside the lochie, where tolls used to be collected at the bridge. In fact, at one time travellers had to pay to get into Killin over the Dochart, and then pay again to get out over the lochie. The Bridge of Lochie Hotel is beautifully situated and has changed little in outward appearance over the years. Beyond the hotel lies the 9-hole golf course, constructed on the fields of Finlarig in 1913. Finlarig Castle, now a ruin, was the seat of the Breadalbane chief in the heyday of Campbell power in the 17th and 18th centuries. One of these chiefs, Black Duncan, has left his mark on the district by his encouragement of tree planting. And there's a magnificent example of this in this tree-lined avenue. About half a mile east of Finlarig was the pier which served Killin in the days when there was a steamer on Loch Tay. This connected with the local train at the pier station, And between the wars, many excursions were run from the cities, taking passengers down the loch to Kenmore and either returning by Stirling or going back by Aberfeldy. The Second World War sounded the death knell of the steamer, and we have a picture of the ship eventually being removed from Loch Tay after her last journey. The railway line, with the sleepers removed, now makes a pleasant walk back to the main Killin station, where the council yard takes up some of the site. The local train was always affectionately known as the Pug, and was much missed and received quite a send-off on its last journey in 1965. Road transport then became the main lifeline of tourism in the area. But of course there had been a gradual increase in movement by road over the years, from the days of the horse-drawn vans like this bread van, and the early petrol vehicles, like McLean's van. And McEwen's lorry. And some of the pre-war private cars. Coach traffic has increased dramatically, resulting in parking problems in the narrow streets of the village. And although tourism is the mainstay of the area, agriculture remains a vital part of the local economy. At the beginning of the century, many people were employed, as can be seen from this picture of a clipping at Kennock. Haymaking also needed many hands. Today's young ladies would find any work in this outfit rather difficult. Gradually, pictures taken over the years tell the story of how the numbers employed on the land have fallen. Today, 2 men and a combine harvester can do work which previously needed a squad of labourers. Another labour-intensive activity, particularly early in the century, was servicing the needs of the shooting tenants. Gamekeepers, stalkers and gillies for the fishing were all required. Turning from work to leisure pursuits, the area boasted various clubs and associations. There was motorcycling, the best known in the sport being Bob McGregor, a trial rider of some repute. Others, like Alistair McKinnon, rode for fun. Being cheaper, ordinary bicycles were much commoner, and there was a cycling club which was obviously very active, as the pictures indicate. The Rambling Club tackled the high tops in the area in the 30s, and today the keen climbers join the mountain rescue team. The Curling Club is probably the oldest club in the district still flourishing today. One of our earliest pictures is of a match being played in Loch Tay in 1895, and later playing on the Dochart in 1963. Most of the outside play was on the Mclarton Pond, or where the switching station now stands in Glenlochy, or as here, on indoor ice when this group of locals played a rink from Canada. Bowling also had its devotees, the green opposite the Killin Hotel being well used when the weather permits. Older players would envy the luxury of today's new sports pavilion. Killin has had a football team for many years. Now, with proper changing facilities, showers and a floodlit practice ground, the old stagers who played in the 20s and 30s would think they were at Hampden Park. The local golf club is still going strong after 84 years. When the club celebrated its Golden Jubilee in 1963, 4 professionals played an exhibition match, and the locals were delighted to find that even the experts found Killin course difficult to score well on. Another club with a long history is the Drama Group. In this 1912 photo, please note the hats worn by the female members of the orchestra. There are also pictures of Gaelic choirs and of a choir which sang at the Perth Music Festival in 1959. There was a guide company for many years, and the Brownies still meet regularly. The Boys Brigade was in abeyance for some time, but has returned to strength recently. The school has always played an important role in the community, as here in the Jubilee year of 1897. Then 1912, 1938 and 1960. Our view of the past would not be complete without remembering some of the characters who have enriched the life of this village over the past 100 years. Archibald McDermott at the door of his joiner's workshop, and with his family at Peril Cottage. Scott the weaver. Five solemn gentlemen from the council inspecting the new sewage works. This is Jean Johnson. Dr. Duncan McCall attending to Lord Glenorchy. A tinker's wedding at Killin Manse. Duncan Johnson, Rachel Williamson and Jean Johnson. Bean McGregor and Ella Walker. Lizzie Robertson at Moorlanich. James Anderson at Kinnell. Duncan MacDonald and some others at the Killin Show. The estate gardener appearing on candid camera. Alistair McKinnon and John Bryson at his workshop. George Smith and his sister Paddy McKinnon. The first inhabitants of Ballacroy's Court. Mr. and Mrs. Macpherson, he was the estate mole catcher. The local home guard, no wonder Hitler backed off. And the legendary Loch Tayside giant. Having viewed our recent past, we leave you with our future.
When I've done my work of day, and I roll my boat away, down the waters of Loch Tay, when the evening light is falling, then I look upon the north, where the afterglories glow, and I dream of two bright eyes, with a merry mouth below. She's my beauty and the Anrua, she's my joy and sorrow too, and I doubt she is not true, but I cannot live without her, and my heart is full of woe. For last night she bade me go, and my tears begin to flow, as I sing hey ho ho ho. Me and your lovely hair has more glamour, I declare, than all the tresses rare from Killin to Aberfeldy. Be they lint white, gold, or brown, be they blacker than the snow, they're no more what to me than a melting flake of snow. Oh, your dance is like the gleam of the sunlight on the stream, like fairy songs they seem, the songs you sing at milking, and my heart's a boat in tow, and I gave the world to know if she means to let me go, as I sing hey ho ho ho, ho ho, ho ho.